Hey, I'm sorry if I jump back and forth on this. Watch over, because we're going to be talking about electrons and impacts and earthquakes, and it's all tied in. But watch over this girl's right shoulder, please. And scenes like this are being played out over and over and over again. How hard is it to catch a meteor on a camera? Not anymore. We track the number of fireballs entering our atmosphere since about 2012, 2013, I believe. And we track those that break the sound barrier because that narrows down your search. It takes a lot of margin of error out of the search. And then you can do your counts. And when we had 0 and 1, averaging a half a fireball a year, now that we're up at 480, 500, and above 500 a year, then hey, something's changing in the solar system. And we know what it is. It's Planet 9, Planet 9X, Planet X, whatever you want to call it, Nemesis. But it's very, very difficult to capture a meteor on a camera. It's like trying to capture, it's like, I can't really compare it to anything. It's like trying to capture a bullet out of a gun with your bare hand. But the trajectory of these fireballs that are showing up on camera now, more and more, we're seeing, again, a north-south influence on many of them. So if something passed underneath the solar system, this is what you would expect. Some coming over the top, some coming underneath the bottom, and indeed, many of our impact craters all across the Earth line up 2 and 3 and 4 across entire continents in a vertical longitude, as if they were being steered in. Enter your magnetic field. So the fireballs have plateaued in the last year. We think it's because of Jupiter was running interference, and even Saturn and Neptune. So they plateaued off, but the size seemed to be getting bigger. And the reason we say that is because of the number of people that report on these. We're starting to see reports where hundreds of people are calling in. So for hundreds of people to see a meteor, it's got to last pretty long. If they last pretty long, 9 times out of 10, it's because they're bigger. What has meteors got to do with anything? Well, they're increasing. You can't do anything about them. And they may be our saving grace. They may bring to us some particulates in the air that aren't just aluminum. The picture of our solar system is not one of equality. This is a hydrogen mapping, and you see that one side of the solar system is devoid of hydrogen. Hydrogen comes from our sun. So does the sun only eject solar flares in one direction? Of course not. So what could be creating such a lopsided view of our solar system? And we had the answer to that, and we've pretty much proven where the protons are going and how and where and how and why. So see us over on our Patreon channel for that answer. The elements being found in the cosmic rays, is there a shift in iron? Is there more iron? Fe is iron. Why is that a predominant cosmic rays? I thought those came from stars that had already been through 1 or 2 collapse cycles already. Those extreme compressions are required to fuse heavier elements into even more heavier elements, or the heaviest of elements. And so, is there more iron? Well, I want you, when you go to SWICS, SWICS, to measure iron and helium, these are symptoms of our brown dwarf, would be the iron and the helium, and even lithium. When you look for those three elements on SWIX, at least 2 years ago, they were taken off, but all those other ones, all those other cosmic rays were still there. We look at the magnetosphere of the sun to see if this thing's influencing the magnetic loops. We saw about a month ago the loops seem to be expanding on that cresting horizon, and now they seem to be flattening. So does that mean right behind, from your point of view, is there a brown dwarf behind you? And are those loops that are directly facing you being pulled towards you right now? And if you look at the background glow, that yellow-green glow, if you look at it, it's more of it in the corona. And of course, as the electron loops pass through plasma, you get a glow. And so that gives off radiation. That glow is actually 17 nanometer radiation, which is very extreme ultraviolet. It's so extreme, some people might even call it an X-ray. 17 nanometer radiation. That is a wavelength that emitted through photoionization. That means when electrons go through a light-sensitive plasma. We look at the geomagnetic storms, and we see they are in flux, just like everything is flux, flux, flux. And they want to blame these geomagnetic storms on coronal hole streams. However, they skipped a day. So I don't know. I think this has a lot to do with the electron pulses going on. And you can see these. I put these together for you. I'm seeing if I can run them through it. It really looks like a Roman candle, the tailstream of Earth. Tailstream set up by the movement of the passage of the solar wind. When you start introducing secondary particles that aren't coming from the sun, you change that magnetosphere. So what we're looking to happen is for the magnetosphere to expand now as the directional component of that solar wind shifts. And we're looking, though, for the coronal hole streams, though, to run faster. So that'll lend itself to more earthquakes. And people say, well, those aren't balls of electrons. Well, we went up higher and higher in altitude. These instruments are at 400 kilometers altitude. This one's higher up. And higher up, you see what? You see a ball, okay? A ball. And this is an instrument that does what? Measures electrons. So it's actually took a snapshot of this phenomenon where these balls occur because of their being focused by both poles. It's like a conveyor belt of electrons that meet where? About the equator. So when you get too many, you bridge the north and south component. They get highly energized, and poof, away they go because they repel one another. And then it leaves like a little void that will fill up again. And the reason we use this instrument, it's the one that measures temperature, is because the one that measures actual concentrations and counts has been cut off about Canada and Mexico, so it's really hard to see the whole globe. So we have to go to the electron temperatures on this specific instrument. And everywhere there's a temperature, it has to be an electron. So it's acting like a map of electrons by measuring their heat signature. This one is a total count. And you see in our, they call it our L belt, there's layers. There's layers, there's zones, there's regions. You can see that, right? And that's tremendous. That's really, really tremendous. And so without protons, and the ratio is way off, then what's compressing our magnetosphere down to 8 Earth radii every now and then? These aren't all coronal hole streams. You know there aren't all coronal hole streams. We've hardly seen many coronal holes, and if they are, they're small. So what's compressing the magnetosphere that's so filled with repelling electrons? That's got to be pretty significant count of other particles. And brown dwarfs are helium factories. But everybody wants to know that. So, and the reason we're doing this, we're trying to see what direction the wind's coming from and determine where this brown dwarf was just, about a month ago, so we can tell you where it is today. Earthquakes, though, I think we've proven it. Other people have proven it. Earthquakes are a symptom of tidal forces and magnetic shifting. This Earth is swinging around the sun like a ball on a string, and something comes in and gives it a little kick and changes its direction, it's going to shift the plates on Earth. This earthquake sequence was the start and the finish of an alignment created by Venus and Jupiter. We indicated this and told you with no uncertain terms these earthquakes were going to show up as soon as Venus, Jupiter, and Earth alignment. And in the morning, both of these bright stars passed one another. Both of these bright planets passed one another in the sky if you got up and watched them every morning. But about a month later, early January, Earth wasn't in an alignment with anything. And we had a similar cluster of quakes that simulated the similar clusters that we were measuring with this brown dwarf, when the brown dwarf aligned with the sun or Venus or Jupiter. Now the brown dwarf, if it's out where, in the direction where Earth is and the sun pointing at the brown dwarf right now in the upper part of your screen, then that would account for the earthquakes. And to me, that's a pretty strong indicator. In fact, that's a better indicator than the solar wind. That's a better indicator than what direction the asteroids are coming from. That's a better indicator because it's related to the position of the planets specifically. So that puts this brown dwarf probably out in a Mars alignment right now. So that means we passed it in January. Everybody's waiting for the world to come to an end. And I've been saying if you protect yourself from the radiation, you'll survive this. And if you die 5 years from now from cancer, you didn't survive it. And again, if there's more cosmic rays, then the magnetic field in the sun should become more visible, even under visible light. And they should not be stationary. And we see, again, an interaction that looks like a more than one magnetic field. Waves of something passing through and by one another. Those are not stationary little tendrils, little fingertips. Those are not stationary. They are moving. And when we look at the top of the sun, we're starting to see more and more of the magnetic field lines, which means the density of electrons at the North Pole are increasing now, the North Pole of the sun. Remember, the South Pole of the sun has been so active, it's unprecedented what was going on down there. And when we look down there, we do still see